years primarily a military town. That song was titled after his address, which was Caroline Street. Here's a little snippet of that song. There's a woman going crazy on Caroline Street, stopping every man that she does me, saying That's right, Caroline Street, originally the home where the wealthy wrecking captains lived. Beautiful homes always lined this street. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these old houses were destroyed in the 1886 fire as this neighborhood was rebuilt on. Most of the houses were constructed of Dade County pine imported right off the Florida mainland. The city actually was able to rebuild in less than 4 years from the ground up. The house on the right-hand corner is an unpainted structure. As we go by, look to the third floor, you'll see 5 third-floor windows tucked up underneath, making this the only 3-story eyebrow style of house known to exist anywhere. The entire house was well restored in the early 80s to become a popular guest house. And as we come to the next intersection, on the far right corner, we'll see the best house on the island, the home of Mr. Curry, Florida's first self-made millionaire. Built in the Newport, Rhode Island beach cottage style of architecture, counting the addition adding after the 1886 fire, in total 62 rooms in size, making it by far the largest single-family home ever built in Monroe County, past or present. The Currys lived there through the early 1970s. It has now been completely restored, now used as the Curry Mansion Inn and Guest House, boasting 43 suites. If we look to the far right-hand corner, we'll see the only 3-story bar in the state of Florida. This is called the Bull on the ground floor, Whistle Bar on the second floor, and you go all the way up to the rooftop. That is the Garden of Eden. Last building optional bar, left on Duval Street, but it won't open until noon this afternoon. And like all the bars, it will be open until 4 a.m. tomorrow. Crossing over the intersection, on the left-hand corner, we're going to see the 3-story greenhouse with the white trim, dark green shutters. That is the Porter family home, built in 1838. The same Porter family owns the property, 7th generation later. And it's here that Dr. Joseph Yates Porter was born in 1847, died 80 years later, same bedroom, 1927. His granddaughter, Miss Jessie Porter, was one of the early founders of Old Island Restoration. She helped implement restoration techniques that are still applied today. If we look to the left-hand corner, we look at the pale gray building, trimmed in white with the greenish-blue shutters. This is the birthplace to the Pan American World Airways building. So it was completed. Pan Am sold their first ticket here in 1926. A year and a half later, October 28, 1927, Pan Am sold the first regularly scheduled international airline ticket in the United States, offering daily air service between Key West and Havana, Cuba. And so up until 1974, when Navy divers were instructed to sever the telegraph cable over security concerns, today we still keep in touch with Guantanamo Bay using satellite communication as opposed to air service. Now they come to the right-hand corner. Here you're going to find the short white picket fence, the house behind, third oldest standing structure when it was built in 1830 for a suspected pirate who turned wrecking captain, John Geiger. Today the house goes by its common name, the Audubon House, named for naturalist John James Audubon. He lived in the original house for just over 3 weeks. In the year 1832, he came to paint the native birds who needed supporting ease. On our left side is a small triangular piece of property. In the center you'll see the tall stone obelisk. That is a memorial for the 167 Union soldiers who lost their lives in the yellow fever epidemic in 1862. Directly ahead of us, behind the orange and green trolleys to the right, you're going to see the unpainted structure with its 65-foot lookout tower. It's a complete blended live-action theater and history museum together. Their goal is to take you back in time to the 1850s and 8 years of wrecking. That's where we conclude our tour. On the left-hand side is where you may continue on. Trains depart every 20 to 30 minutes throughout the day. Last train departs at 4:30 this afternoon. And to pull into Mallory Square, we'll turn on to one of our 4 surviving brick-paved streets. This is called Tips Alley. Named in honor of Merchant Aid to Tip, not only did he help found the wrecking business, he's the man responsible for building the house, now referred to as the Ernest Hemingway home. As we look just ahead through the stop sign into the right, you'll see the black iron fence surrounding the sculpture memorial garden. And many of the original founders have been memorialized with a bronze sculpture, a little bit of history for the contributions they made the settlement of the city. And down the walkway, about 500 feet, will take you right to the water's edge. That's Mallory Dock, home to the nightly sunset celebration. The night sunset occurs 7:55 in the evening. Show starts about 6:45, 7 o'clock. Continues till about 8:30. Gives you plenty of time not only to enjoy the show, but also learn a little bit of its history. And this is one of our few surviving family-friendly venues here on the island on a daily basis. As we round the corner, we'll head south on Duval Street. Look to the far right side. See the large yellow and red brick building, the old Cuban Cigar Manufacturers Bank. Established 1891, they didn't trust the early American banks, constructed their own. Second-story balcony is solid mahogany. Took one gentleman 5 years to complete the carving and the assembly. Took over 20 oxen to hoist it into place as one solid unit. On the right-hand side is the Robert L. Ripley, believe it or not, museum. Mr. Ripley's favorite time was during the Second World War. He would come down and entertain the troops, showing film footage of some of the things he had seen that he could not.
I want to go there for lunch.
First museum was opened in St. Augustine, just about 470 miles to our north. Now, this is where we start the Conch Republic Day celebration. If you look to the right-hand side, down about 100 feet, you'll see the original location of Sloppy Joe's Bar. Today we know it as Captain's Tony's Saloon. 1937, we moved to the new location, seen on our right. Current site for Captain Tony's favorite restaurant and competitor, Sloppy Joe's, on our right side. Now, same for Joe Russell, the owner of the original Sloppy Joe's. He and Ernest Hemingway were good friends. The building has been open at that location since the move, and today is where they host the annual Hemingway Days Lookalike Contest. This July 21st will be Hemingway's 118th birthday. That's when we host our annual Hemingway Days Lookalike Contest, the last season party before the doldrums of summer kick in. Now we look directly ahead of us, you'll see the American flag, the Florida flag on the left, on the right-hand side, fishing flag and the flag of the Conch Republic. On the right side of the street, we are now at the south end of the historic seaport. We're going to go through the seaport a little later in the tour. Now, as we approach the traffic light, if you look through the intersection right-hand corner, look at the tree growing above the bushes on the corner. That is called the shaving brush tree or the powder puff tree. We have both of them growing together. They're known for the little pink pistils at the end of the flower. They're a sure sign that spring is here to stay, and they remain in bloom until the cool weather sets in the first part of December. As we look to the left side, you see the thick gray bark growing along the trees of the West Indies. These trees were imported in the late 1930s. These trees grow very well in our subtropical climate. They're also as close as we can get to a hurricane-proof tree. They have a deep taproot, lots of surface roots, keeping the trees upright. When the wind speed exceeds about 60 miles per hour, the leaves also disappear rather quickly, reducing the wind load. These trees have been surviving storms since the 1930s and do an extremely good job. Today, you'll only see approximately 40 of the trees along Simon Street. Many were replaced. Following the 1935 hurricane. As we look ahead on the far right-hand corner, we can see the first brick bank building built on the island. It was built after the 1886 fire. It opened in 1889, and it was the original location of the First National Bank of Florida. You'll see the ground floor entry. The walls are just over
that place pretty
1 inch, 1 foot thick of solid brick. They also had steel plating to make it a fireproof and theft-proof bank. When it was sold in the 1950s, they tried to remove all the steel on the inside. They decided to just keep the steel inside the building to this day. The vault in the back left corner has 2-inch thick solid steel walls. Now, as we look to the right-hand side, we're going to come to the beautiful view of that Spanish colonial mirador. Folks, on the right-hand side, this will give you the best viewing opportunity from this location on our right-hand side.
Yes.
Or the West Indian mahogany trees growing on the corner. As we pass through the intersection, far right-hand side, this is where you're going to see the last large cigar factory built, completed in 1919. Cigar factory operated at the end of the Second World War, but it did close in 1947. Today it's home to the AT&T building. They are a local telephone provider. Folks that have visited Key West in years past, you were here back in the 1980s, you remember, 5-digit dialing. We only had more than 10,000 telephones before we only had to dial the last 5 numbers. Prefix 29 applied to everybody. Today you have to do 10-digit dialing. Yeah, just past the cigar factory, look on the right-hand corner, you'll see the third building to be called Downtown Fire Station. This is station number 1, Old Town Key West Firehouse. This building just recently was completed in November of 2013. Notice the ramp on the right-hand side looks like flame is part of the handrail. On the right side is the yellow wall surrounding the Gardens Hotel. This was actually one cigar factory. The cigar factory shacks were seen on the right-hand side. There are 16 of them. The actual cigar factory became the main hotel spot. Now you can rent one of the rooms in the hotel or one of the little shacks. They're now cottages, and they're all on one private compound. They also have weddings and receptions on the property with all the trees and shrubbery. You're in a very remote area, even though you're right in the middle of downtown West. So the smaller cigar factories began springing up on this side of the island. You'll see the tiny little shotgun style of homes. These are identified with a window on one side of the building, doorway on the opposite. Right through the rear door, the 2-room homes are connected by a hallway, allowing the cool breezes to blow lengthwise to the building, keeping the houses now cool and comfortable, and even the warmest summer days. This style has become most popular in the Cuban cigar factory villages between the late 1870s and the early 1920s. Well over 1,000 were built in Old Town. But today, fewer than 50 survive in their original state. The vast majority of them have been added on to over the years. 2-room houses weren't real popular after the Second World War, so people began to add on to them quite aggressively. Now we're going to make a right-hand turn onto Truman Avenue. Actually, you know what? I think we're going to go straight, because we're going to come back up Truman Avenue because of the road closures. We're going to go straight so I can show you Gato Cigar Factory. The reason why we used to talk about this years ago on the old tour route. This factory was by far the largest ever built in South Florida, making Gato a very wealthy man. As we go straight, you'll be able to see the building as we come to the next intersection. In fact, you can't miss it. It's a large white building, originally built of wood. It too was damaged. In the 1909 hurricane, Gato was a wealthy man at the time. Rather than rebuild his factory out of wood, he used reinforced poured concrete. This proved to be very expensive, about 5 times the cost of building out of wood. But you'll see it's still standing today. On the left-hand side is the administrative offices for Monroe County School District. When it closed in 1939, the Navy purchased it. They used it as a commissary during the Second World War into the 1950s. As we come to the stop sign, if you look across the street on the far right side, you'll see one of our few surviving Art Deco period buildings. Built in 1927, this was our first full-line appliance store. Key West was one of the original electrified cities in the South. Today you can see our appliance store. Now here you could buy electric stoves, refrigerators, washers and dryers were also becoming popular as the wealthier citizens, just before the Great Depression, began snapping them up. Today, it's one of our many t-shirt shops and a great little souvenir shop on the back side. That'll bring us to our next stop. This is stop letter C. We're going to circle around so we can pull in the correct way. This is on the corner of Truman Avenue and Duval Street. Folks, if you're wearing a beige or a tan sticker on your shirt, this is where your tour began. If you'd like to complete your tour here, you may. If you want to hang on board, you're more than welcome to do so. We have about 20 minutes left on our tour. This stop is also closest to the Hemingway House, Southernmost Point, Butterfly Nature Conservatory, south-facing beaches, and all of our smaller art galleries. As we come to the right-hand corner, we'll see the official end of US Highway 1. This is mile marker 0, the end of the overseas highway. Introduced to Key West in 1938, this is where it terminates. The corner is Fleming and Whitehead Street, although it begins 2,209 miles north, straddling the Canadian border towards Kent, Maine. And by the year 1960, Old Island Restoration was formed to encourage people to historically and accurately restore their old homes. One of the best examples can be seen on the right, the White House with the flat roof. Over the hood of the silver minivan, you'll see the address number 407, and above that is the Gold Starfish Award, the top honor bestowed for a well-done exterior restoration. Well, they are kind of fussy when they judge the old houses for authenticity. One thing they often look for in the exterior is how the board ceilings were painted. It was a common tradition to paint the undersides a medium sky blue color. Looking to the left, you'll see the first three buildings, 2 stories tall, undersides painted to resemble the clear blue sky. The theory was keep the bees from building nests on the board ceilings and from stinging the residents occupying the building. If you look to the right side, you'll see the bright blue building with yellow trim. That's home to our only downtown movie theater, the Tropic Cinema. Right in front, you'll see Miss Marilyn Monroe. She's been recreated by one of our local artists, Jay Seward Johnson. Based on one of her more famous poses captured on film, taken during the filming of the movie, The 7-Year Itch, as she stood atop the subway grate, a draft of air ruffled her dress up and around her shoulders. Here she is, holding the dress down. As we cross over the intersection, far right corner is the oldest Protestant church in the state of Florida, St. Paul's Episcopal, established on the site 1832. However, this is not the original church building, building number 4. Dates back to 1919, built for reinforced board concrete. The original 3 churches have all been destroyed, 2 of them by hurricanes, one of them succumbed to the fire in 1886. And today, with the sun shining brightly, the over 80 stained glass windows come alive in the Florida sunshine. As we look on the right-hand side, we're going to see the large gray house, trimmed in white with lavender shutters, a West Indies colonial Victorian style of home, built in 1898 for a surgeon, Dr. Joseph Otto, now restored as one of our downtown guest houses. Right-hand corner is the oldest continuously standing church in the Florida Keys, the United Methodist Church, established on the site in 1877, built using limestone quarried right from the property. Foundation walls, 2 feet thick at the bottom. Walls stay dropped less than 10 inches thick at the top. And speaking of the top, we are finding the only mountain on the island. This is it. Solaris Hill, 16 feet above sea level. I ain't going to the tour, folks. It's all downhill from here. Descending Solaris Hill on the right, we'll see the short white picket fence. Behind is the former home of clothing designer Calvin Klein. He bought the house in 1983, continued to use it as his winter retreat for the rest of the decade. Right-hand corner, big pink house. Along the right, you'll see its white porch that wraps around to the left side. That is the original Bahama style of house. Built in our sister city, Bahama. Right here in by the Bartlett family. Reassembled on site in 1847. House design proved quite popular and would be used extensively rebuilding this side of the island following the 1886 fire. As we round the corner, if you look on the right-hand side, we'll see a single-story example of a Bahama style of house. Porch on the front, wrapping around to the left-hand side. As we round the corner, just past the house, you're going to see one of the view of the Christmas palms that are starting to develop. You'll see the slender palm trees on the right above the bicycles. You'll see the little green berries developing. The green berries of spring mature to become the red berries of fall, always in time for the holiday season, giving origin of their name, the Christmas palm. To my right is a pale yellow house, number 410. Notice it's 2 stories tall, with the 3 second-floor windows tucked up underneath the overhanging porch, designed to permanently shield the second-floor windows from the hot tropical sun. The overhang would act like a giant air scoop, collecting the breezes, redistributing the cooler air to the second-floor windows on the front, while still expelling the hot, stale air out the back. By 1890, this would become one of the top 5 styles used extensively in the city's rebuilding effort. After 1890, the city had recovered. The next 40 years would permit unchallenged prosperity on the island. But by 1930, the effects of the Great Depression were now being felt. Key West went from being the richest city in the United States to become the absolute poorest city in the country. Our population fell by over half, fewer than 10,000 residents. And those who did remain, 90% were on some sort of federal government assistance. No one paid their property taxes on time, forcing the city government into bankruptcy. July 1st, 1934. A judge from Miami named Julia Stone was appointed to oversee the bankruptcy and flew into Key West International Airport. He was given a full historic tour. Deciding to make Key West the next year-round tourist destination, put the residents back to work, implementing a series of WPA-funded projects. Residents began painting downtown buildings, cleaning up the streets, and planting more than 10,000 new trees. Money was set aside for a grand opening celebration for the week of December 5th, 1935. Mother Nature intervened on September 2nd with the worst hurricane in Key's history. Made landfall 86 miles north of the Matacumbe Key. Destroyed 43 miles of Flagler's land-based railway. Again, isolation for the mainland. Even the Florida East Coast Railway was going broke. They sold off the Key West extension to survive. The state was the winning bidder, removed the railway tracks, widened the bridges and regraded the road beds, thus creating the Overseas Highway. Opened in 1938. Prosperity did return, but not to the levels enjoyed prior to the Great Depression years. As we look at our left side, this is a large home on our left called the Conch Captain style of architecture. On the top, you'll see its primary feature, that is the Captain's Walk. Similar in design and execution to the New England style Widow's Walk. The extra height gave the wrecking captains a much better view out to the coral reef. Combined with the spyglass, they can now scan continuously, always on guard, looking for any changes in weather patterns or a ship that may be in trouble. House was built in 1855. As we round the corner to our left, you'll see the yellow and green trimmed building. Through the trees on the tops, it's a slightly modified Captain's Walk, better known as a Mirador. Same idea, just a little different architecturally. The house was sold in 1905 to the first Jewish congregation settling South Florida. That would become the B'nai Zion Synagogue in the 1960s. Here's a church on to Simonton Street, named for John Simonton, which was the first American owner of the island. Purchased in 1822 for the purchase price of $2,000. The intentions were to establish the wrecking business, use the natural deepwater harbor as a port of entry, and ultimately as a military stronghold. By 1828, the city was incorporated. The next 100 years would permit unchallenged prosperity. But by 1928, the 100 years had run their course, things were beginning to change. There was no more wrecking business. Sponging cigar production were both in steep decline. Now, the only bright spot that year was the arrival of our most famous resident to date, Ernest Hemingway. He and his second wife, Pauline, have been celebrating their Paris honeymoon, planning to take delivery of a new custom-ordered Ford automobile. Their car was delayed by almost 7 weeks. They were given a small apartment to use just above the Ford dealership. At the time, it was the tan building on our left with the dark brown balconies. Anyway, the apartment was on the second story, right-hand side. Here he wrote the first draft of his novel, A Farewell to Arms. Looking to the right-hand corner, we'll see the large stone structure. This is the federal government office and the federal courthouse, completed December 1931, built using limestone imported roughly 87 miles north of the Whitley Key Quarry. Every piece of limestone would be transported by way of Flagler's Railroad. Restored in the 1980s, it still serves to go funny today. It's a little bumpy here, folks, as we approach the north side of the island. This is one of the oldest settled sections of the island. It's also home to one building to survive in this neighborhood, April 1st, the day following the 1886 fire. We'll see it in the far right-hand corner. It's the red brick building with the twin peaks in the roof. Constructed 1877 as the William H. Curry & Sons Tobacco Warehouse. The day following the fire, the building had saved itself and the contents just over $100,000 of fine-tuning tobacco, which is fair consideration. The owner, Mr. Curry, saved a fortune. He went on to become the first self-made millionaire in the state of Florida. We'll show you the Curry Mansion just prior to completing our tour. As we approach on the right-hand corner, we're going to see two yellow buildings with green trim. The one that sits precisely on the corner is the older of the two, built in 1903 and opened as the first Coca-Cola bottling plant in the state of Florida. From 1903 to the end of 1978, Coca-Cola was bottled on site. But for the first 42 years, up through the end of World War II, Coca-Cola was bottled primarily using recycled rainwater collected from the building's tin roof. The water was stored in a 1.5 million gallon cistern located in what has now become the basement of the building. entire Coca-Cola plant had to shut down weeks at a time, waiting for the next rainstorm to come along and refill the cistern. Quarter mile, and notice where it connects with the island. Right at ground level, the black slabs of granite are part of the Key West AIDS Memorial, first dedicated December 1st, 1997, World AIDS Day. Following the White Sandy Beach on the far left, we come to the Red Brick Fortification, home to the West Martello Tower, one of 4 brick fortifications built by the Navy throughout the Caribbean. Construction began 1861, halted the following spring, building 2-foot thick masonry walls rendered obsolete by the newly developed rifled cannon. The project sat unfinished, abandoned by the Navy for the next 87 years. Finally, after World War II, it was donated to the city, now completely enclosed, housing the Key West Garden Club. And beyond the port to the left sits one of our many public beaches. This is Higgs Memorial, and at one time the entire south shoreline enjoyed these vistas. As they developed the Newtown area, this would change the shape of the island and an altered tidal flow. Periodically, the import sand from as far away as Daytona Beach. The folks visiting from the state of Florida, you're well acquainted with the name Henry Flagler. After all, he is the man who introduced tourism to our state back in the 1880s. Visiting from outside of Florida, you're probably more familiar with his business partner, John D. Rockefeller. These two gentlemen established Standard Oil, New Jersey, 1867. Within 15 years, they would become 2 of the wealthier men in the world. And when Flagler retired to South Florida, he built his own railway system. They'll know today as Florida East Coast Railway. By 1896, trains were made daily trips to St. Augustine, south a little town called Port Dallas. We know the area today as Miami. By 1901, Flagler would purchase the independently owned railways to the north, boasting a monopoly on trade and commerce. But the Panama Canal project was announced in 1903. Flagler planned to extend his railway south of Miami all the way to Key West. Engineers required 41 railway bridges to safely connect the 29 islands together. Construction began April 1905, took 7 years to build, completed at a cost that would exceed $50 million. Flagler himself arrived on the first passenger train January 22nd, 1912. To further encourage tourism, Flagler planned the luxury hotel seen on the left, the Casa Marina. The name says it all, house by the sea. Chose the site for the Grand Hotel, excellent views of the Atlantic, was home to some of the best tropical breezes. Hotel construction would begin the spring of 1918. It first welcomed guests New Year's Eve in 1920. Today the hotel and all 41 railway bridges still stand, a real testament to Flagler and his engineering. We are approaching one of my favorite views from the island. Directly ahead of us are the palm trees of Spotswood Park. One of our best views, only because you see the clear blue sky reaching down to the aqua green waters. See a little bit of whitecaps off in the distance. That's due to the windy conditions as the front is passing through. Off in the distance, you'll see a couple of sailboats and the large channel markers. They are what will guide the cruise ship in the morning. One thing you'll notice we don't see in Key West is a lot of really large wave activity. We're always protected from the larger waves by a natural living coral reef. Still growing just 7 miles south of here, it parallels the old shipping channel known as the Straits of Florida. Later ships are often blown off course, resulting in 8 deadly shipwrecks. Though in a more active than normal hurricane season, we can see shipwrecks as often as once or twice each week. Whenever a shipwreck was spotted, cries were heard throughout the town. Every able-bodied man in town responded. They would race to the side of the shipwreck, save the passengers and crew first. Then, using licenses issued by the wrecking courts, they could now legally salvage the cargo. Divers recovered the cargo off the ocean floor, loaded on barges, brought to Key West, cataloged, warehoused, and then sent to auction. By 1850, this made Key West the richest city per capita of any city in the United States. In the 1860s, lighthouse and boating installations dramatically reduced the number of shipwrecks. The industry would come to an end in 1921. Here, the last wrecking cases were heard and settled by the wrecking courts, bringing a close to this chapter in our history. As we look on our left side, you'll see the large Reach Hotel property on the left. This used to be the site of the first trolley service, established in 1885 for Eduardo Gatto's trolley service. Transport workers from Gatto Village to his cigar factory. Initially installed, it was a mule-driven system, but they used to pull the trolley cars annually. Later it was upgraded to an electric system with overhead wires in the late 1890s. By 1900, they had established 8 miles of trolley tracks crisscrossing the island, but a hurricane in 1926 destroyed the trolley barn with the cars tucked away inside, permanently suspending trolley service, replaced a few months later with a new modern bus service. And the original trolleys would circle the island using the street we've just turned onto. This is South Street. Historically speaking, remembers the landing point of our first European explorers. Montevideo gives credit for the keys. The year was 1513. No evidence exists that he ever set foot on the island. We do know he claimed the territory in the name of Spain. We weren't settled as a Spanish colony until a bit later, 1572, when the Spaniards landed on our south shoreline to the left, greeted by a white sandy beach covered with thousands of human bones. The bones would also give rise to our Spanish name, Cayo Hueso. Translated to English, it means Bone Island or Little Island of Bones. This would remain our name for the next 190 years. By 1763, we became part of the English Empire. Under British rule, our name became mispronounced as Cayo West or later Key West, the full English translation. 1822, for the first time, now part of the United States, Commodore David Porter was sent to establish the Navy base on the island. Getting rid of the pirates was his primary mission. To do so, he brought 8 highly maneuverable schooner boats he nicknamed his Mosquito Fleet. By 1826, the pirates were gone. Trade and commerce began to flourish. By 1828, the city of Key West was now incorporated. At the time, it made us the oldest and also largest city in South Florida. Population of just 421 residents. Current population, 25,716. As we come to the stop sign, if you look through the intersection to the far left corner, we'll see the most photographed house on the island, the elegant Judge Vining Harris home. Queen Anne Victorian structure, built entirely of imported brick, lumber, stained glass. Took 4 years, 17 craftsmen to complete. Finished 1899 and would sit further south than any other house in the United States. Held the title as America's southernmost house up until 1940. Since then, the house has lost the title, now been completely restored and now retitled as the original southernmost house in the continental United States. But its first title had really been in jeopardy as early as 1938. Here an author, Alpha Strabel, published her book about the wrecking business, titled Weep the Wild Wind. Profits from her book we used to build her house on the west side behind the sand wall. Proved Sadie with an odd sense of humor. She had her house built 18 inches further south. Today the house still claims the title as America's current southernmost house. On the left-hand side, behind the black iron fence, you'll see the first white column. On our left, this surrounds the original U.S. Navy hospital. Here, the Commodore David Porter was sent to control the pirates in the Caribbean. Laying down the Navy in 1973. The Army commissioned both the communications center and the training facility. There's both the Boca Chica Naval Air Station as well as the U.S. International Airport. Simply, it was the actual aircraft that were built after the First World War, but before the Second World War, they're still in service today. Look just past the security gates on the left, about a half a mile onto the Navy base. And of the 4 industries we'll talk about on our trip, the one we're best remembered for is the Cuban cigar business. Began early on, 1831, just as William Wall opened the first cigar factory outside of Mallory Square. In the 1870s, we saw huge influx of Cuban cigar manufacturers. Many fled Cuba, hoping to avoid persecution as Cuba fought for its independence. By 1890, 1/3 of the island's 20,000 residents were Cuban, and rolling over 100 million cigars annually, just over 160 factories. By now, Key West cigars had become world famous. But after a series of fires, hurricanes, labor relation issues, the industry would succumb to a slow and gradual decline. Came to an end in 1961. Castro's Cuban embargo now became illegal to import the Cuban tobacco needed to make cigars. As a result, this would close the few remaining cigar factories of the day, including the Perez family cigar company. Founded by the patriarch, Isidor Perez, we'll see his house as we pass through the intersection to our right. The house has since been sold in 1982 and underwent a 1-year restoration, transformed into a restaurant, and on Friday nights home to the best cabaret show on the island. You'll see it on the right-hand side, now called La Teresa de Marti. We call it La Tida for short. On that second floor balcony, Jose Marti himself would make his rallying speeches.
It is my dream that every Cuban I already as I understand, the Cuban and Key West.
On the near left corner, we see the all-white structure with the crown tin roofs on the top. That's the site of the original Cuban club, formed in 1900 as a patriotic, beneficial, and social club. The lower portion of the building was originally used to give medical and educational services for the Cuban citizens. Later, the second story, when opened to everyone as a recreation hall, was here that they held some of the best dances in U.S. history. Located right in the heart of the 7 largest cigar factory villages, the name changed to a Spanish term, El Morro Pollo. This means the gopher, named for the large number of gopher turtles that once inhabited the south side of the island. As we approach the stop sign, we'll be back to Whitehead Street, named for John Whitehead. He was the older brother of William Whitehead. Both brothers came to the island aboard the very vessel that rescued them from a deadly shipwreck just between here and Havana. When they came to Key West back then, this was nothing more than a small Spanish fishing community. Roughly 100 inhabitants lived here full time. Both brothers came to the conclusion that the wrecking industry would make Key West a successful place to live. By 1822, they introduced the Navy to help get rid of the pirates. By 1828, the industry was off and running. One of the things that led to the downfall of the industry actually made the shipping channels much safer, and that is seen on the far left corner, just above the canopy of trees. That's the tip top of the Key West Lighthouse. Built in 1847, this replaces the 1825 lighthouse, destroyed by the worst hurricane in Key West history, Great Havana Storm, 1846. The new lighthouse was moved 3 blocks further inland for better storm protection. They chose this natural rise to give it an additional 8 feet of height. Today it towers over the island at 78 feet tall. It takes 88 spiral steps to wind your way to the top. You can't use the circular balcony. It does offer unobstructed views of Old Town. And from that balcony you can also get an excellent view of the former home of Ernest and Pauline Hemingway's house. Look right as we come to the end of the white picket fence. It'll be on the far right corner. Only house on the island, surrounded by a tall red brick wall. The home was purchased in 1931 for the Hemingways. They lived here as a couple for close to 7 years. While here, Hemingway did some of his best and most productive writing. After his tragic death in 1961, the house would be sold to some family friends, later converted to a museum which you can still enjoy today. Behind the brick wall, we see the lushly landscaped gardens. Visit the first freshwater swimming pool built in the Florida Keys. And with our cooler than normal start to this past year's fall season, it's given us a great opportunity to net the over 40 cats roaming the property. Most are direct descendants of Hemingway's, with the 6-toed cat named Snow White. Full history of the house dates back to 1851, first constructed for merchant Ace and Tim. The gentleman who profited well from the wrecking business will be on the street that bears his name as we come to the conclusion of our tour. When we look to the far left-hand side, we see the large wooden church building, the oldest African-American church in the Florida Keys, established 1864 by 2 free slaves, Sandy Cornish and Adeline Simmons. Although slavery was used on the island, it wasn't very deep-rooted. This has always been a very free and open society, much as you find today. On the left side, where the ladies get her photograph taken, you'll see the winner of the 2009 Conch Cruiser contest. As the way we conclude tomorrow's Conch Republic Day celebration, we'll vote on the most unique vehicle currently driving on our streets. You can't be a 2-time winner, you can only be a 1-time winner. That was the winner for Gonzo back in 2009. He retired from driving the train the year previous. Now as we continue down Whitehead Street, we come across one of the over 230 bars you'll find on the island. This one, though, is rather unique in the fact that it's one of the 3 oldest previously operating bars in the state of Florida. We'll see it on the right-hand corner. We're looking for the long white building with the green trim on the top, bottom, window, and door frames. This dates back to 1890. It was built after the 1886 fire destroyed the original structure. Current building open to great fanfare. Popular location as it was in the heart of downtown, close right by the entry point to the U.S. Navy base's new entry gates. Very popular up until 1920, when on January 17th of that year, the Volstead Act, we know as Prohibition, was enacted, which forbade anybody from consuming, distributing, purchasing, or distributing alcohol in the United States. Well, it wasn't very popular here in Key West, as in most parts of the country. The Green Parrot Bar owners decided they would disregard the law entirely. They hired their own private rum smuggler, Archie Thompson. He would bring rum in from the West Indies, Cuba, Jamaica. Today, the Green Parrot Bar became one of the more popular bars. Destination for folks to visit, especially following the nightly sunset celebration. A couple months ago, during spring break, a lot of spring breakers came down here. Because of it, quite a few of them spent just a little too much time at the Green Parrot. Over 300 of them did get a free tour, though, right beside the Monroe County Courthouse. See it on the left-hand side. Look for the red brick building, white clock tower on the top, and a portico cascading down the front. Ironically, it just dates back to 1890. Just like the bar. Right, big white building trimmed in blue. That was the original tourist attraction built for the city, completed in 1934. They have shows throughout the day. Come down, pet a live stingray. They'll show you the other creatures on display. Next door is the large yellow brick building with the arch windows. That's known simply as Building Number 1. First Navy property for the city, built in 1852 by the Army Corps of Engineers. After the war between the states, the lower portion became a coaling station, used to refuel the steam-powered ships. Next door is our award-winning red brick building in the Romanesque Revival style of architecture, the Customs House. Built in 1891, it's also served as a post office and a federal courthouse. It's here that the early shipwreck salvaging cases were heard. It's also the site for the inquiry into the explosion and the sinking of the USS Maine. This is the event that sparked the Spanish-American War and led to Cuba's independence from Spain.
Right, yeah.
Far right-hand corner, large brown building in front of red brick steps, guarded by a couple of cannons. That's the Mel Fisher Maritime Museum and his treasure exhibit. In the year 1622, the two Spanish treasure galleons, the Nuestra Senora de Atocha, Santa Margarita, sank about 30 miles west of here in a hurricane. 1985, Mel Fisher and his crew found the mother lode of the Atocha treasure, recovering $458 million in gold, silver, and emerald jewelry from the site. Much of the treasure is still on display. As we follow the white wall on my right, we're going to approach the presidential gates. These were built by the Navy back in 1906. First opened in 1912, they welcomed President Howard Taft's arrival. Gates are most frequently open for President Harry Truman. Today, just beyond the gates, everyone can visit the Harry Truman Little White House Museum. It's still Florida's only presidential attraction. And as we approach the intersection on the far left side, we're going to see the giant banyan tree, providing us some shade. It's a member of the ficus family, identified by the hanging or aerial roots that grow down from the main trunk structure's branches. This case has developed an archway right over the driveway. Upon reaching the ground, it does form a new trunk structure. Those roots help stabilize the tree during the high winds of hurricane season. As we look through the intersection, far right corner, we see a smaller version of a similar species of ficus, a Spanish laurel tree. Here the roots group around the trunk of the tree, giving it a virtual wall right on the corner. And behind the tree, set back to the street away, is another red brick building, the Key West Post Office, designed by our former mayor, local architect, Sonny McCoy. Finished in 1985, although its design is similar to the way many federal buildings were constructed right around the turn of the century. This style helps it better blend in with the other historic buildings. We'll be making a left turn onto Fleming Street, named for John Fleming, one of the original 4 founders of the island when this first became part of the U.S. territories. As we round the corner, far left side, you'll see one of our most colorful trees in bloom. These are the yellow elder trees. Known for their bright, vibrant colors, they're native to the Bahamas. We parallel the same latitude line as the Bahamas. You'll see these trees blooming quite well. They did get a late start, though. Usually they're blooming by the end of February. They start blooming till the beginning of April due to an extended amount of cool weather. Just past the tree, far right side, is one of our favorite houses on the island. It's a lavender building this year, trimmed in white with bright purple shutters. There's the family name, Marrero's Guest Mansion. Built for Francisco Marrero, came to the island in the 1870s when he bribed his way out of a Cuban jail. Stowed away on a steamship, arrived in Key West, later met and married his second wife, the Key West lady. House built for her as a wedding gift. Family moved in 1891, lived there happily by all accounts until the year 1903. Year, Francisco was taken ill and he died rather suddenly. Key West wife assumed she would inherit the house, cigar factory, and the fortune. That's when the first wife from Havana showed up. Nobody knew about her. Seems he had never legally divorced her, though. She was the legal heiress to the estate, and she could prove it with a valid marriage certificate. Took the aid of the sheriff to evict the Key West wife, throwing she and the children out onto the streets of the city, leaving them now homeless and penniless. Today we still see the ghost of the Key West wife who returns to the home and is often seen wandering the halls of the home that she lost. Today, the Marraro Guts Mansion is one of the many buildings we find in Old Town, all part of our National Historic Preservation District. Key West has the largest one in the country. 3,100 buildings found in Old Town, better than 10% listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We have the largest collection of wood frame structures in the state of Florida, and the largest collection of 19th century architecture anywhere. One building has all the characteristics, and we'll see it on the far right-hand corner. Aqua blue in color, 2.5 stories tall. Cafe Marquesa. On the corner, you'll see the wooden double doors, and to the left, the small bronze plaque. Still places the building on the National Register permanently. As we look next door to the right, 2-story gray building. On the front, you'll see a white porch, first and second floor. Classic revival from New England style. Popular in the 1800s, but modified for our tropical climate. They added larger windows to give better airflow, while the wraparound porch would shield the windows from the intense summer sun. And we'll see this modern style on the left-hand side, called the Bahama style of house. Here we'll see the White House with the porch on the side, wraps around to the front, shields the windows from the hot sun, as well as driving rain of hurricane season. Right-hand corner is the large coral-colored building home to the Monroe County Library System. Established in 1892, this is its third location, built in 1959. This uses the Bermudian style. But our oldest house style dates back to the 1700s, introduced by the English settlers of the Bahamas. These are called Conch style cottages. Very small in size, as we'll see on the left. Second house up from the corner. Here we find the tiny pale greenhouse with its steeply pitched roof. As we go by, look beyond the driveway to the left, you'll see 2 small additions stacked behind the house, one in front of the other. These are called zigzag additions. The roof line creates the up and down zigzag shape. High peaks trap the heat to keep the rooms cooler. Low valleys made it easier to collect rainwater, our only source of fresh drinking water. Looking to the far left side, we see the bright yellow building trimmed with white and green. It's one of our many downtown sponge warehouses. Key Westers could fill a building this size on a single day. They work together using small wooden boats and a long pole hook on the end. They can pluck the sponges right off the ocean floor. By the turn of the century, Greek spongers arrived using diving equipment. They walked along the ocean floor, now collecting 10 times the number of sponges. Wait for the divers crush the immature sponges, ruining the next season's harvest. Resentment developed, and eventually the Greeks moved on to Tarpon Springs, Florida. Key Westers again dominated the sponge beds in 1938. In that year, a bad case of red tide destroyed the sponge beds, thus ending the industry commercially forever. It saw a resurgence in the late 1960s. Today we'll show you the complete history of sponging. That's where we end our tour, Mallory Square, in front of the sponge market. And as we look on the right-hand corner, just above the first driveway, you'll see the tree with its red and peeling bark. That is a gumbo limbo tree, one of the few native species of trees we find on the island. The vast majority of our plant life has been imported for the last 190 years. Looking just ahead of us beyond the stop sign, we approach our first and only Army post. This is Perry Court. It was established in 1833, but to be honest, it wasn't real successful as an Army post. Kind of tough to maneuver the troops on a small, remote little island. It made a lot more sense when it became part of the Navy and Coast Guard operations. Today, as we round the corner, behind the black iron fence, you'll see the first 3 rows of houses. Beyond that, wide open parade grounds. With the weather holding on, we may even hear the U.S. Navy band practicing. Navy would first come to Key West to control the pirates of the Caribbean. During the war between the states, they were part of the Atlantic blockade. Military presence remained strong with the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now decommissioned, mostly a communication center and training facility. Today it serves both the Boca Chica Naval Air Station as well as West International Airport. To the far left side, behind the white picket fence, we'll see the original military cemetery. Most were victims of disease back in the mid-1800s. They died of yellow fever. In the 1920s, the bodies were exhumed to give it a full military burial at the Pensacola, Florida Cemetery. 1991, the skeletons and bones were found in unmarked graves. The area has since been rededicated as a military burial ground. And most of the old town streets we'll encounter today, first laid out in the 1820s by a gentleman named William Whitehead. This is called White Street, passing through one of our oldest standing communities. Little houses we'll see on the left there among the oldest on the island, many dating from the 1840s into the 1860s. Mostly built by ship's carpenters using hand-carved, mortise-intended joints. This type of construction is tried and true in shipbuilding and translates well to architecture. It would give the old houses a much better chance of withstanding the high winds of the hurricane season. Keeping the old houses watertight involved using metal, or in the early days, tin roofs. Today we see the metal roofs in the modern form on our right. These are the galvanized sheet steel roofs. In the early days, metal roofs also aided the collection of rainwater. We have no source of fresh water. Collecting rainwater was the only option. As the rain ran to the edge of a metal roof, collected by a perimeter gutter system, stored below the house in a large cement holding tank called a cistern. Water stored here is what pulled us through the dry winter months that lay ahead. In the 1940s, the Navy would complete a pipeline that still connects us to the mainland, now import all fresh drinking water used throughout the Keys. And these same metal roofs are what saved this neighborhood from the most destructive fire in our history. Unlike the wood shingle roofs, metal roofs would not allow sparks to hop from one house to the next. Our worst fire occurred March 31st, 1886. Began on Duval Street. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning. Raged out of control for over 12 hours, destroying most of the original city. It did take about 4 years to rebuild, but the city did rebound and prosper into the 1920s. As we look on the right-hand side above the white bench on the corner, we'll see the bougainvillea hedges. Known for their brightly colored leaves, the little white dot we see at the end of the leaf cluster, that is the actual flower from the plant. Because of our cooler than normal start to the fall and winter and spring season, most of our plant life is delayed in terms of color. We do have one plant, though, that remains colorful regardless of weather conditions, and that is the Thai plant. Look for it in the far left corner behind the white picket fence, known for their foot-long, bright pink leaves. And pass through a brief quiet zone, we'll emerge on the east side of the island, where our tour continues.
How's it worse, dude?
Onto Eisenhower Drive, named for President Dwight D. Eisenhower's 1955 visit to Key West. Prior to his arrival, this was called North Beach Road. This was the end of Key West, the island. The area we see left of the intersection, the area we now call Newtown, the area didn't always exist in its current form. The original form was nothing more than a low-lying salt marsh. The area literally disappeared twice a day during high tide. When the Navy got involved, they began to dredge a product from our shallow ocean floor called marl. Mixture of sand, seashells, and coral rock, built it up to about 4 feet above sea level. Today, Newtown is the modern side of the island where we go for the car dealerships, gas stations, department stores, and modern grocery stores. Rounding the corner at the stop sign, if you look to the right, you'll see the marble statue. The gentleman portrayed is Jose Marti, Cuban Revolutionary War hero, Cuba's fight for independence from Spain. He was a powerful and passionate speaker, came to Key West on many occasions to raise money and support the Cuban independence fight. Today, his monument stands proudly at the corner of Bayview Park, still the city's largest public park. Purchased in 1921 from a wealthy cigar manufacturer, Eduardo Gato. Gato had acquired the land in the 1880s so he could build a house for his wife Mercedes. The mansion was finished in 1890. The time had sat just beyond the stop sign to my right. Now home to the two smaller yellow buildings, these are the Boys and Girls Clubs. The Gatos enjoyed their home through 1899 when they returned to Cuba. Their home was donated to the Cuban people, becoming a charity hospital, Casa del Pobre. When the city took over the land, they didn't have any use for the building, but in good conscience, they couldn't destroy a charity hospital. So they saved the building, pulled it from its foundation, placed on a rolling platform, aided by mules, and was pulled to its new location on the far right side. Here we find the tan building with its graceful white windows and shutters, Casa Gato. Originally in Bayview Park, later renamed Mercedes Hospital, went on to serve the Cuban community into the early 1970s. Lack of funding would eventually force the closure of the building in 1974. At the time, it was thought to be a temporary closure. 7 years later, it had in fact become a permanent one. By the early 80s, the building was sold, now completely restored. The once large house was converted into 8 small condominiums, and that's how it still serves our community today. As we have the green light, we'll make a left turn along to White Street once again. Directly ahead of us, soon to be on your right, that's an extension of the original Cuban community. It's here that we recommend you come for some of the best collections of Cuban coffee houses, restaurants, bakeries, some of the best found anywhere north of Havana. Down early in the morning before sunrise, you can still smell the Cuban bread, pulled fresh right from the oven. Think of it like French bread with a sweeter taste and a much softer texture. Often served with a cup of strong Cuban coffee called Muchi. Together, these were a great way to get started after a long Saturday night spent on Duval Street. Hey folks that are visiting Key West for the first time, or maybe we have some folks that have been down to see us in a while. Kind of hard to be on the island for any amount of time before you hear the term conch. Today the term universally applied to anything native to the island. The original Bahamian settlers refer to themselves as conchs. They used to eat the giant sea snail or mollusk called the sea conch. Found in our shallow waters, the animals are prepackaged in a spiral shell, much like the one I'm holding up. Meat inside a shell this size weighs close to a pound. Depending on how the meat is prepared and cooked, it may be served as conch salad, chowder, fritters, or even conch steaks. Today, if you're lucky enough to be a native-born citizen, you may refer to yourself as a conch. Lived here for 7 years or longer. We'll grandfather you in. You may call yourself a freshwater conch. Play high school football, you're known as a fighting conch. Date one of the drill team members or one of the cheerleaders, you can be dating one of the conchettes. But in addition to being the southernmost city in the continental United States, Key West is also the capital of the Conch Republic. Formed April 23rd, 1982, this would be a direct response to a United States Border Patrol blockade of our land link to the mainland, the overseas highway. Legally crossing 42 bridges, 29 islands, we arrived just south of Florida City, and it was here that each vehicle was now stopped and searched, looking for illegal aliens and contraband. Long delays soon followed. Attempts to have the blockade removed, stalled, or ignored by the courts. Finally, our mayor, Dennis Wardlow, had enough, deciding if they're going to treat us like a foreign country, why not become one? Following day at noon, we did. Seceding to the United States, declaring ourselves a free and independent country, we marched down to the Navy base to only steal Cuban bread in protest. A minute later, we surrendered at the Navy gates. We applied for $1 billion in foreign war aid relief money. Never did see a check for that amount, but we did get the blockade removed 2 days later. And today we are in the midst of our 35th anniversary celebration of the founding of the Conch Republic. You'll see Duval Street is closed from one end to the other for the bed races and the drag races.